How would you like to heal autoimmune conditions? In today's episode with Dr. Kristin Wild, we'll discover how. And Dr. Kristin Wild is an award-winning integrative health educator, entrepreneur, and speaker. And she's the creator of the therapy modality called awareness therapy and founder of Modern Health Solution. So Dr. Kristin Wild, tell us, how can entrepreneurs heal autoimmune conditions? Heal podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever. Shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
That is a very great question, and one that would take a great deal of detail to get to, so I'll do my best to keep it simple. This is the thing. I love speaking to entrepreneurs because I myself am an entrepreneur. And as you know, we tend to endure extra stress. We can't help ourselves. And a life, it can be extra demanding for an entrepreneur. As you know, you wear many hats, you have a great deal of responsibility, and it's not for the faint of spirit. So I myself, going through the entrepreneurial journey, went through that experience on top of day-to-day life, and I ended up with an autoimmune condition because, as many of us do, we burn the candle at both ends, and one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden we're sick. And once Pandora is out of that box, it is really hard to put her back in. So once though that's triggered in our system, it's very difficult to go backwards and regain health. But there definitely is a way. I went through 10 years of living with illness while being an entrepreneur at the same time. At the end of that 10 years, I ended up essentially bedridden. I was in bed about 80% of the time, running my business from my computer in my bed. And I was told I needed 4 of my joints replaced as my joint tissue had deteriorated in many places in my body. And my organs were shutting down. I was getting infections and viruses and complications. And one thing led to another, and I did find a way. Here I am years later, and it really is a step-by-step process, and it's multiple factors. There's so many of us here going through chronic anxiety, depression bouts, mental health issues, and that can all lead to the deterioration of our cellular health. So our cellular health has been deteriorating for generations because of all of the traumatic experiences, the wars, the famines, and the political systems, you name it, the chemical environment. So we have multiple factors to work through to create a very strong lifestyle when we do, and that's around nutrition, how we master our mind. And what that will do is start to help to clear those cells so that our DNA can restructure and become healthy again.
Thank you. So what are autoimmune conditions? Give us some examples. What can they manifest as in terms of the condition, in terms of like what tends to become impossible to do or very hard to do as a result of having an autoimmune condition? And what is the first step entrepreneurs can take towards healing?
Sure. So we'll address it kind of one at a time in that. So how we become sick first, we kind of talked about that the cellular health is in poor health. So what that does is it causes our DNA to downregulate. And then when the DNA downregulates, it's in survival mode. So what will happen is whatever you're predispositioned to genetically is going to pop up in the system. So autoimmune conditions all have the same baseline, which is poor cellular health. Then how it manifests in the body, the symptoms that the people get, is based on their genetics. But bottom line is when someone is experiencing autoimmune, there's inflammation in the body. So that will either be inflammation in the joint tissue, with with people that are experiencing, say, multiple sclerosis, that's deterioration in the nervous system. That is inflammation in the nervous system. There's also the skin. You'll see huge rashes and reactions in the skin. Bottom line is, when you're dealing with an autoimmune condition, you have inflammation somewhere in the body and usually the brain. So that's why people will experience brain fog as well, feel very tired, and you'll have usually cold hands and feet because your body's in survival mode. It's moving the circulation into the body. Often people end up with migraines, rashes. They feel allergic to things because the immune system is just completely out of sorts. And so what happens is people end up with more and more symptoms the more disease-filled they become. And so that's where the diagnosis comes from. Autoimmune is autoimmune. Baseline, it's all the same thing. And then there's about 100 different diagnoses that go with it that are just saying, oh, this person has this particular set of symptoms based on their genetics. So from there, now we know what autoimmune is, and 60% of people in Western culture society now have autoimmune symptoms, and 80% of those people are women. So the majority of women in our culture have some level of autoimmune symptoms going on. And with the added stress of our society and all the information going in and the stimulus, it's compounding it more and more. And so the first thing that someone can do if they are looking to move out of that state is you first want to address mastering the mind, which I know sounds like a very strange thing. And it's like, because most people say, well, what food am I supposed to eat? What exercise am I supposed to do? What medication would I take? And it's actually the mind, because our thoughts become things. When we are under a stress state, our mind tells our bodies to release chemicals, these neurochemicals. And the neurochemicals that our mind releases are either disease feeding or health building. So some neurochemicals tell our cells, hey, we're healthy, we're in good shape. And others are telling our cells, hey, this is an emergency. We're in a dire situation. And so what we need to do is master the mind. With all of this constant added stress, what's happened is our animal brain in the back, it is becoming stronger and fed because of the fear. So because of the fear, that part of the brain is being utilized way more than is necessary. And what we want to do is restructure that so that the blood flow starts going more to our prefrontal cortex, which is also called our ethereal brain. It helps us make better decisions. So ultimately, we want to adjust how we're thinking, and that will change the neurochemical release through our body.
Thank you. Is it possible that someone would have an autoimmune condition and not know that? For example, I've had cold feet and hands before, and I've had migraines for 10 years. And luckily, I don't have the migraines anymore, but I still have the cold feet and hands. So is it possible someone would have an autoimmune condition and not know it?
Absolutely. And that's why I say people are experiencing autoimmune symptoms, and because it hasn't progressed to the point, or they've maintained their health to the point where it hasn't gotten out of control. And so it'll be this low grade experience of autoimmune, and people go, oh, this is just life, or this is aging, or, oh, this is me going through hormonal changes, and it's all not necessary.
Thank you. So what can entrepreneurs do to master their mind? And
that's the part where you're attempting to use the tool to fix the tool. And so I always recommend that you work with someone or a group. There's YouTube videos, there's, our group, if that's something you resonate with, but there's tons of people that teach mind mastery, tons of people. And it's just dare to know, start getting educated in what it means to remaster the thoughts, because our brains are programmable. they are programmed from the time we're 0 to 7. This is why people do all the early childhood trauma work and all of those things, because at that time, that's when the brain is just gathering information and it doesn't question it. It just takes it in as truth. And then here we are as adults carrying this information around as our programming. And sometimes we just don't question what we're thinking. And so it really comes down to, if you would like an exercise to start questioning your own thoughts, this is, there's a couple things that I utilized when I was going on my path that really helped me. First is start to take it easy on yourself. It's when a thought comes up and it's critical, because this is the thing, you often take over critical ways of speaking to yourself from some sort of role model or parental figure. And they might not even be talking to you that way anymore, but you just took over for them in your head. And so when you're seeing those critical thoughts come up, talk to yourself like a toddler. It's okay, sweetheart. We make mistakes. We'll try again next time, and this is what we'll do differently. And it's going to be great. You're doing awesome. And it's really starting to learn how to talk to yourself with kindness in your mind in a way that resonates with you. The way that resonated with me is talking to myself like I was a little kid. How would I talk to my young children, right? And that helps reprogram your mind in now when the subconscious brings thoughts up, they're going to be kinder.
That's so fascinating. So are you saying that, for example, for adults that have suffered from domestic abuse or depression because of trauma that happened in their childhood, simply being kinder to themselves when it comes to doing an action where, let's say, they perceive it as a failure. Let's say they did a client contract, the thing didn't turn out as they wanted because it's not perfect. And they've been striving to be perfect because of something that happened in their childhood where they were expected to be perfect. Learning how to be kinder to themselves, to accept themselves, and to talk themselves in general in a nicer way. Just that could make a massive difference in terms of reducing inflammation and in terms of helping the body to actually rejuvenate.
Yes, because then your brain is releasing chemicals like oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine. And when we have those better feeling thoughts, it literally creates better feelings in the body, and it communicates with our cells, oh, we're safe. And now when the cell starts to feel safe, it starts to shed a lot of cells get very bogged down by chemicals because they'll hold on to those chemicals until it feels safe. And so then it will start to shed those neurochemicals that they're hanging on to. You literally feel lighter. The inflammation starts to move from your body. And of course, there's more than just this, but this is a really big key factor when it comes to healing.
Thank you. How can entrepreneurs let go of anger and anxiety, resentment, shame, and guilt, all those negative emotions, aside from speaking in a nicer way to themselves?
Yeah, so there's several ways that we can work through different techniques, and different techniques are going to work for different people. One thing with anger, and this especially is with women, it's really interesting, just as our society has been entrained, it's changing now, but it's, men have been entrained that the only emotion that's acceptable for them to express is anger. And women have been entrained that the only emotion that is not acceptable for them to express is anger. And so that is a big one for people to master in general, in learning how to allow anger to exist and not to become like lightning and strike the closest lightning rod, which is usually someone you love. And this is just an amazing opportunity for us to learn as human beings, for women to learn anger's okay, because we really suppress it. When we suppress emotions, they will manifest as illness. They will, because they don't have anywhere to go or to be expressed. Lack of expression of emotions is a big deal. So with anger, when we feel anger, instead of having that immediate reaction, and this is a practice because sometimes we get reactive, and it's a practice, it's So instead of reacting, we let it run through ourselves. And then what we'll do is go in our own time and let that anger run out. There's several ways to do this. You can write the meanest letter you'd ever write, never say, I'd never say this to someone. I'm gonna write it out and be so mean. And, if no one's around, you can go around slamming cupboards and stomping your feet. And there was a time where I had to let go of a lot of anger, and I just I'm going to let myself let this go. I was stomping around my neighborhood. My neighbors must have been like, what is with this lady? But it works. You need to run that anger out. And then once the anger is run out, now you have this clear channel. You can now go and have a discussion with that person if it's necessary. Sometimes you run it out and you just don't even care anymore. You don't need to deal with it. But if you need to deal with whatever's going on there with the person, you can now communicate with them in a calm way and express how that made you feel, what you were going through in that moment without having that reactiveness. And this can go for both men and women. We all need to be able to express our anger, but not in that outraged way where it's directed at a person. We can express it, working it through ourselves, let it calm down, and then work it out with the person.
Thank you. I've found it very difficult to let go of anger. And I remember a particular case where I was angry for 8 months at someone who I had a disagreement with. That was quite a serious thing that impacted my business over the long term. And I remember I was so angry that I remember having this feeling of anxiety and also like a pain around my throat and migraine accumulating as well. And because the person didn't want to discuss, didn't want to talk it through, it was just a case of ignoring and kind of like making excuses that she didn't have the time to talk to me, and basically making me feel like I wasn't important. And, when it came to collecting money, that was very important, and she was available at all hours. But when it came to actually discussing what went wrong, she just would just disappear. So, and what I found was quite interesting was that I've had situations in the past where people had, done different things than, you could say made me lose money. And I couldn't understand why that particular thing angered me so much and why I couldn't let go. And I remember going to the park and walking lots and thinking about it and trying to let it go. And I'm not the kind of person that is violent in the sense of, like having to slam any cupboards, because it's just not my style. I wouldn't dream of, throwing plates or I don't know. That's just not my style. So I was unable to actually let go of that. And I did therapy, and I still found that it was just very, very hard. And over time, I kind of started to let it go. But I think you could still see it in my face for a really long time that I was angry. And I think that the anger, you can correct me there, it makes you look uglier, because I'm not sure if it gets trapped somewhere in your forehead, in your body, and it kind of expresses to people that you're like an angry person. And if a lot of that kind of happens with a lot of different people, then you just gradually look a lot uglier than you normally are. And what I found is that when I was doing like exercise and when I was doing like swimming and other things, I would be a little bit more relaxed, but I can't say that I fully let it go. So what would you recommend for entrepreneurs who suffer from anger that they simply cannot let go of?
Yeah. And so anger is an amazing tool, because I'm sure from that anger, it catapulted you in a whole new direction, because it is amazing fuel. And, and this is the thing too, is sometimes you just didn't get angry enough. You really have to run it out. Every emotion will run itself out, and it will come in bouts where first you're really, really angry. And then it's like for a little bit, you're kind of feeling better. And then you're angry again, and then you're feeling better. And then time does tend to heal, but it's like having that experience of betrayal. Anger is a natural response, and sometimes we just want to get away from it. But you're right in how people can perceive when we're feeling angry, because us having verbal conversation is very little in communication. That's intuition, right? In how our brains operate, it's picking up so much stimulus that we don't consciously go through. Our subconscious picks it up, and so you can usually tell, and it's like, their vibes are off. Well, now they've been able to measure the human field as well. So truly, when you're experiencing the person's electric field as well. So now we have this whole new component and understanding how we're communicating with each other. And so you can essentially, I'm sure you've had that when you could feel someone's emotions, like you could feel it without them saying a word. And so, yeah, you're right. It's exactly that. When we hold that anger, this is just a lesson and a tool to teach you how to navigate anger, because you'll find the more you're willing to embrace it, let it run through you, do the things you need to do to move it, then if this happened, something like this happened again, you now have the skills and tools that you don't take it personally. It's not personal what that person did to you, even though it feels personal. It was directed at you personally, but it's not personal. That's a reflection of whatever's going on within them. And they showed you who they are. And it's like, thank you, because I want to have as little to do with this person as possible. If this is how they show up, if they're not willing to communicate and work through whatever it is we need to work through, this isn't someone I want to have in my life. And then we start to flip the script a bit in when we see people behaving this way, we go, no. And we're more prepared next time in that we don't let that happen to us anymore. And anger is like how you're feeling is very legitimate. And so it's like, let yourself feel that way. It's like, clearly whatever happened there, you felt very betrayed in the situation and it affected you in a way. And this person didn't seem to care. And you know what? They might not, but because they don't have the conscious ability, it's not even malicious. It's like, it's like when Jesus says, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do, because it's like they're not capable of coming to your level.
Thank you. Are there any physical techniques that can enable people to let go of anger faster? So the reason I ask you this is because in May of last year, a friend of mine did like the emotion code technique on me, and it was through Zoom. And what I found is that in a few hours, I managed to let go of a lot of different trauma that had actually caused the migraine. And I haven't had migraine since. I only have light headaches. So it was like a very simple technique that that he used. And I wonder whether you have similar techniques that maybe, I don't know, tapping something, or whether it's EFT, or I'm not sure what else can entrepreneurs do to find like a faster way to let go of anger and other negative emotions or energetic blocks.
Yes, because we want to move those neurochemicals out of the body. So even if because what happens is it'll accumulate and you'll feel even angrier because those neurochemicals are all through your body. And so exercise is huge. Exercise is a big thing. Just moving, walking, moving. This is what you were saying. It went for a lot of walks in the park, and that you were naturally knew what to do. That's what animals do. When they get scared and they go in the fight or flight situation, they get attacked. What a deer will do is it will go and lie on its side once it's safe, and it will run because it's moving, flushing the system. So that's why exercise is really great. Breathing, even if we're sitting here, before you sit down to do your work, have certain times of the day that just reminds you, deep breaths. There's people that do deep breath work. They love that. But you can also just like remember to breathe deeply, because sometimes we're not oxygenating enough and circulating enough because we're tense. When we're in an anxiety or anger state, our body goes tense, and then the blood isn't going into the muscles properly. And this is why you kind of feel stiff. You'll get the migraines. And so really big piece is movement and breathing.
Thank you. I was in Spain for 3 months this summer. And what I found is that whilst there, I got like 90% recovered in terms of my health. And I felt like so much more beautiful and with so much more energy. And I'm wondering whether you feel the sun, or just being, like going for long walks, or is there anything else that could help to heal someone from having negative emotions and the impact of that on autoimmune diseases?
And that's the thing, is we are these human beings. We're very unique animal beings, and that we are conscious that we're conscious, and we can have these conversations and ponder our reality. So that's pretty fun. But we are still animals. So we need sunlight. We need earth. We need rest. We need rejuvenation. We've been so entrained to go, go, go. And so it makes sense that when you go to Spain, you're in a beautiful place surrounded by beautiful things, and the atmosphere is lovely, that you start to relax, and then the body starts to flush out all these toxins, and because it feels safe and in a place where it's in rest. And rest is such an important piece. It is just as important as the work. And so I'm at the point in my life where every morning I'm an hour and a half to 2 hours of rejuvenating, in programming my mind to expect the best, and to remind myself of all that I'm grateful for, and to walk and move and breathe, and be in the early sunlight. It is so important. My life I used to be on the complete opposite end of that spectrum, where I could barely walk or move. I had so much buildup. And now, because every day that's so important piece, there's no buildup. It's part of your day-to-day life. And I've never been more successful than I have been since I started to learn how to rest and rejuvenate myself, ironically.
Thank you. What's the routine a person who has already an autoimmune condition that makes it so difficult even to like get out of bed? So for example, I remember when I had migraines, they were so terrible that it was really hard to even work or to even think about working. Or, the thing I was thinking about was, how can I survive so I can watch a movie? That was like my you can say my wish of the day kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I wonder what routine, habits, tools, or apps entrepreneurs can use to start reversing autoimmune conditions.
Yes, well, we've created that, and we have something called the Collective, and it's free and open. We have multiple practitioners, and you can come in and opt into different courses and go to group calls and learn how to start mastering this. And then if you're someone who really needs that deep individual care, because it is a step-by-step process to go through this, then we do have an individualized care program as well. So there's something for everybody. And I welcome entrepreneurs because I am one, and I love talking about prosperity as well as health, because our material world exists, money exists, right? Being successful in our vocations, that exists, and it's part of our health. And we can't just pretend that, oh, well, just don't go to work and go and live in Spain and wander around and enjoy the flowers. Well, that's nice, but not everyone has the opportunity financially to do that. And so I would love entrepreneurs to come in, because they're just so amazing. An entrepreneur is a unique being.
Thank you. For those entrepreneurs that are surrounded by negativity, by naysayers, by people who put them down, by clients who are irritable, by things that simply don't work whilst they are suffering from an autoimmune condition, what do you suggest they do to kind of put themselves back into the positive frame of mind that will contribute to that environment of healing?
Yeah. So usually if someone is surrounded by those circumstances, they need to learn better boundaries. Me too. Takes one to know one. And so that was the biggest thing in my life as well, is I was surrounded by people that they essentially used me to benefit themselves, but it wasn't a reciprocal relationship. And this happens to people a lot, especially people that are entrepreneurs. They're responsible people, they're go-getters, they're smart, and that's who it happens to. It happens to the kind, intelligent, funny, amazing people. And so it's really learning how to control the narrative, So you decide how you want your life to go. And if someone is interfering with that, then it's up to you to do something about it and to put those boundaries in place so that they don't have access to you in that way. And if you're in an environment where that's happening all over the place and there's not a lot you can do about it, you're going to have to go. You have one life as this person. We can believe that we have infinite lifetimes, or we can believe we live one life. Either way, you will only ever be Lily one time ever. So this is your life. So don't put up with that shit. And so I often say to people, my motto is, and if you can say it over and over, is do no harm, take no shit. And if you can master that, you have life mastered. Because just because you're a kind person, just because you're generous and giving and you are the responsible one, does not mean that people get to take advantage of you. They don't get to dump their shit on you. No.
Thank you. How can entrepreneurs heal from narcissistic abuse? What would be the first step?
Well, that one, again, it's a very much a similar journey to overcoming disease. And often they go hand in hand. And this is why we predominantly help people with anxiety and depression, overcoming traumatic relationships, and autoimmune conditions, because they all go hand in hand. They all go together. And so when we're living in narcissistic abuse, it is very difficult because your brain is not operating at its full capacity, because a traumatized brain it's constantly in that alarm bell state. And so it is I say always work with someone who is an absolute professional at understanding narcissistic abuse, because many people they will use that word and they can't even fathom what it's like to live with someone who has a personality disorder. Now, a personality disorder is borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. There's another one, but it's so rare. So we'll stick to those two. They are learned. People are not born with these personality disorders. You typically in childhood go through a very severe abusive situation, or the opposite. They are highly pampered and taught to think that they could do no wrong and that they're perfect. And so it is a sad thing, because we can have compassion for people with a personality disorder, but they cause massive destruction in people's lives. And the greatest gift you can give someone with a personality disorder is the lack of your presence. You want to disassociate and get further and further away from them. The thing is work with someone who understands that. We teach that in the collective. It's free. This is something I have done for 20 years for free in helping mostly women and children escape domestic abuse. You can end up in a narcissistic abuse situation in work environments, in friendships, in parent to children, in siblings. There is no one that's immune to going through that experience. And often you can feel like an idiot that you got caught up in it but no, it's a person with that type of personality disorder. They are highly manipulative. They come by it naturally. It's their number one skill. If they use those skills for good, oh my gosh, our world would be a heaven. But chances are they're not going to get help, and that people have a really hard time with that, because it's like, oh, well, they did this one thing, and that's called breadcrumbing. Yes, they do this one thing, then you're like, oh, you get this hope for the change, and chances are they're not going to change. They don't want help because they don't think there's anything wrong with themselves.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
Sure. Yeah, you can go to modernhealthsolution.com and join us in the collective. It is all different types of practitioners, people just like you, and people that want to move into this new state of being. You can see we're moving into a new paradigm as humanity, where success used to be all about the money. If you had the money, you were successful. That's not what it's like anymore. Now success is emotional intelligence. How do you communicate with others? How do we get along? How do we collaborate? How do we grow together? How do we build together? Where is the win-win in everything that we do? Because it's possible. We live in a time where there's more than enough for everyone. We can heal, we can build amazing businesses, we can work together in collaboration. And I welcome anyone who has that type of mindset to come and join us, because it is good times.
Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health change makers to live your healthiest life ever.